Sarah had always dreamed of living in a quiet, picturesque town, far from the noise and chaos of the city. When she found an old, charming house in the small town of Ravenswood, she knew it was the perfect place to start anew. The townsfolk were friendly, but there was an air of mystery that hung over Ravenswood, particularly the dense woods that bordered the town. On her first evening, as Sarah unpacked her belongings, she noticed a flickering light in the distance. It seemed to be coming from deep within the woods. Intrigued, she stepped onto her porch to get a better look. The light vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Sarah with an eerie feeling. The next day, Sarah met her neighbor, Ethan, a kind man in his early 30s who had lived in Ravenswood his entire life. He offered to help her with any questions she had about the town. As they chatted, Sarah mentioned the light she saw in the woods. "Stay away from the woods at night," Ethan warned, his expression turning serious. "There are stories, legends about those woods. People hear whispers, see things that shouldn't be there. It's best to keep your distance." Sarah laughed it off, thinking it was just local superstition. However, as the days passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her from the woods. One evening, as Sarah was settling into bed, she heard a faint whisper. She strained to listen, but the sound was too soft to make out any words. Assuming it was the wind, she tried to ignore it. However, the whispers persisted, growing louder each night. Sarah confided in Ethan about the whispers, but he looked uneasy. "I've heard the whispers too," he admitted. "It's the spirits in the woods. They say the woods are cursed, haunted by the souls of those who died there under terrible circumstances." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Cursed? Haunted? Come on, Ethan. You can't be serious." Ethan's expression was grave. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. People have gone missing in those woods, and those who return are never the same. Promise me you'll stay away from there." Despite Ethan's warnings, Sarah's curiosity was piqued. She had always been drawn to the mysterious and unknown. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to investigate the whispers on her own. The next night, Sarah lay in bed, her ears attuned to every sound. The whispers began again, this time louder and more distinct. She could almost make out words, but they were in a language she didn't understand. Her heart raced as she realized the whispers were coming from the direction of the woods. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Sarah grabbed a flashlight and ventured outside. The air was thick with tension, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath her feet. As she approached the edge of the woods, the whispers grew louder, surrounding her from all sides. Sarah shone her flashlight into the darkness, but the beam was swallowed by the dense foliage. She took a deep breath and stepped into the woods, determined to find the source of the whispers. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Suddenly, Sarah saw a figure darting between the trees. She called out, but there was no response. Her heart pounded in her chest as she continued deeper into the woods. The whispers were now deafening, filling her mind with a sense of dread. Just when Sarah thought she couldn't take it anymore, she stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. The whispers seemed to emanate from within. With trembling hands, she pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with old furniture and cobwebs. As Sarah explored, she found strange artifacts scattered around: an old locket, a child's doll, and a faded photograph of a family. The whispers grew softer but more coherent, as if they were trying to communicate with her. Suddenly, Sarah felt a cold breeze brush past her, and she saw a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. She froze in terror as the figure slowly turned to face her, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Sarah stumbled backward, tripping over a broken chair. The figure advanced, its whispers growing louder and more frantic. Just as it reached out to touch her, Sarah bolted from the cabin and ran back to her house. her heart racing. Back home, Sarah tried to make sense of what she had seen. She knew she had to find out more about the cabin and the spirits haunting the woods. She decided to visit the town's library the next day to search for any records or stories about the area. At the library, Sarah met Mrs. Hawkins, the elderly librarian who had lived in Ravenswood her whole life. Mrs. Hawkins was initially hesitant to talk about the woods but eventually relented. "Those woods have always been strange," she said, her voice trembling. "People say they hear whispers and see ghostly figures. There have been disappearances and deaths. The cabin you mentioned was once home to the Turner family, who vanished without a trace over 50 years ago." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She borrowed some old newspapers and books about the town's history and took them home to study. That night, as she read through the documents, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. Sarah realized the spirits were trying to tell her something. She needed to go back to the cabin to uncover the truth. Despite her fear, she felt a strange compulsion to help the restless souls find peace. The next night, armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, Sarah returned to the woods. The whispers guided her through the darkness, leading her back to the cabin. Inside, she searched for clues that might explain the Turner family's disappearance. Sarah found an old diary hidden beneath a floorboard. The entries were written by Margaret Turner, the matriarch of the family. Margaret wrote about strange occurrences and whispers that plagued their home. The final entry was particularly disturbing. "They want revenge. We are trapped. The whispers. They won't stop. God help us." As Sarah read the last words, she felt a presence behind her. She turned to see the ghostly figure of Margaret Turner, her eyes filled with sorrow. Margaret reached out to Sarah, whispering, "Help us." Sarah knew she had to find a way to break the curse and free the spirits trapped in the woods. She needed answers, and she knew exactly who to ask. Old Man Turner, the last surviving member of the Turner family. Sarah sought out Old Man Turner, who lived on the outskirts of town in a dilapidated house. The townspeople avoided him, calling him crazy and cursed, but Sarah was determined to speak with him. When she arrived at his house, Old Man Turner was reluctant to talk. However, Sarah's sincerity and desperation convinced him to share his story. He revealed that the Turners were cursed by a vengeful spirit who had been wronged by their ancestors. "The spirit was a woman named Eliza," Old Man Turner explained. "She was accused of witchcraft and executed by my great-grandfather. Her spirit haunts the woods, seeking revenge on our family. The whispers are her attempts to communicate with the living." Sarah listened intently, realizing that the only way to break the curse was to perform a ritual to appease Eliza's spirit. Old Man Turner provided her with an old book of rituals, warning her that it was a dangerous and difficult task. Determined to end the curse, Sarah enlisted Ethan's help. Together, they gathered the necessary items for the ritual and returned to the woods. The whispers grew louder and more frantic as they approached the cabin. Inside, they set up the ritual, following the instructions from the book. As they began, the spirits of the Turner family appeared, their faces twisted in fear and anguish. Sarah and Ethan recited the incantations, their voices trembling. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and the ghostly figure of Eliza emerged from the shadows. Her eyes burned with fury as she advanced on them. Sarah and Ethan continued the ritual, their voices growing louder and more desperate. Eliza let out a blood-curdling scream, and the cabin shook violently. The spirits of the Turner family joined in, their voices merging with the whispers. Sarah felt a surge of energy as the ritual reached its climax. With a final incantation, a blinding light filled the cabin. Eliza's spirit let out one last scream before vanishing into the light. The whispers stopped, and the cabin fell silent. Exhausted but relieved, Sarah and Ethan left the cabin and returned to town. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive feeling that had hung over Ravenswood was gone. The townspeople noticed the change, though few knew what had happened. Sarah visited Old Man Turner to tell him the curse had been lifted. He thanked her, tears of gratitude in his eyes. "You have freed my family," he said. "We can finally rest in peace." Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a lingering unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that the curse might not be entirely gone. In the following days, Sarah continued to research the history of the town and the woods. She learned that Eliza had been a healer, accused of witchcraft by those who feared her knowledge and power. Her wrongful execution had led to the curse that plagued the Turner family and the town. Sarah shared her findings with Ethan, and together they decided to hold a memorial for Eliza, hoping it would bring further peace to her spirit and the town. They organized a small ceremony in the woods, inviting the townspeople to join them in honoring Eliza's memory. The ceremony was a solemn affair, with the townspeople lighting candles and placing flowers at the site where Eliza had been executed. Sarah spoke about Eliza's life and the injustice she had faced, urging the townspeople to remember her as a healer and not a witch. As they concluded the ceremony, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and the air felt warmer. Sarah and Ethan hoped that this final act of remembrance would ensure that Eliza's spirit could finally rest in peace. In the weeks that followed, the town of Ravenswood seemed to come alive. The oppressive feeling that had hung over the town lifted, and the townspeople felt a renewed sense of hope and happiness. The whispers had ceased, and the woods, once feared, became a place of beauty and tranquility. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that she had played a part in lifting the curse. She and Ethan grew closer, their shared experience forging a strong bond between them. They often visited the woods together, now a place of peace rather than fear. As the months passed, Sarah decided it was time to move on. She had come to Ravenswood seeking a quiet life, but her experiences had shown her that she was meant for more. She wanted to help others who faced similar challenges and uncover the mysteries that plagued their lives. Sarah packed her belongings and said her goodbyes to the friends she had made in Ravenswood. She promised to stay in touch with Ethan, who had become a trusted friend and confidant. As she drove away from the town, she felt a mixture of sadness and excitement for what lay ahead. As Sarah drove past the edge of the woods, she rolled down her window to take in the fresh air. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the trees. Just as she was about to leave Ravenswood behind, she heard a faint whisper. Her heart skipped a beat, and she pulled over to the side of the road. She listened intently, but the whisper had faded into silence. Sarah took a deep breath, convincing herself that it was just her imagination. Sarah continued her journey, determined to make a difference wherever she went. However, the memory of the whisper stayed with her, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of the seemingly peaceful town. As she ventured into new towns and faced new mysteries, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the curse of Ravenswood might not be entirely gone. The whispers might have stopped, but the shadows remained, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And so, Sarah's journey continued, always on the lookout for the next mystery to solve, the next spirit to appease, and the next whisper in the darkness. Subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Hit the bell icon to never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever heard whispers in the dark?